Let me just, before Todd and I do a very unrehearsed closing on this part, it's going to be fantastic because, well, you know.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I just want to ask, is there anything that jumped out from the conversations that you had on the resiliency plans that you just want to make sure we hear about all at once? Anybody have a conversation? I noticed that Sid Kitson for president keeps coming up, so I don't know what that one. Yes, Maria.
That is where I will be the first person to always put my hand up. So I am going to do that because the city of Palm Beach Gardens, I don't need a microphone.
Yeah, you do actually, so that because we're transmitting.
Okay. The city of Palm Beach Gardens actually sister-citied with Callaway. Yeah. And we immediately brought up several truckloads of food, clothes, washers and dryers to their city staff, because the city staff, and it's a small staff, they couldn't do their jobs because their building was destroyed. So we adopted the city along with their staff and clothed them, fed them, brought 3,000 meals up at Thanksgiving. Our city manager is up there right now bringing toys for the kids. That's so awesome. One of the things that I put up there was put some reserve dollars aside so you can adopt a sister city for crisis in the future.
That sounds great. I think it's one of the things we've heard as we've gone through this is, you know, there's a lot of things that government can do, but the reality is that there are more things that we as citizens, that we as businesses, that we as volunteers, that we as voters can accomplish together. And, you know, when you look at some of the stats, if you come to our conversations about quality of life, with civic and governance, you're going to notice that Florida ranks 50th in the rank of volunteerism. Did anybody imagine that we, as large as we are and with many opportunities that we have, that we're right at the bottom of the list in volunteerism? There's more work that we can be done in everything. So thank you so much, Mayor. I appreciate everything that you do and the examples you lead with. Any other thought before we close out? So let me then turn to our esteemed chair. Todd Powell is with Weyerhaeuser, and he's been on our chamber board, Chamber Foundation board, and our chamber board, as a matter of fact, for quite a long time. We've had some conversations over time about a number of different things. A lot of them are frustrations. We have an abundance of opportunities. We've talked a number of different varied topics today. But Todd, you know, you get to see the world from all over. And this 2030 project was advised by you and the things that you get to see others kind of leapfrogging us on sometimes. But I want to talk about the positive things. What do you think is going on with Florida? What did you hear today in this growth and infrastructure conversation that jumped out to you as, hey, we're on the right track?
Well, I think that the thing that jumps out most to me is just seeing the folks that are here in the room that are engaged. I was having a conversation in back, and some of the stuff's a little bit scary. And I guess, Tony, I must say that's a nice way of saying I'm old, by saying I've
for a long time.
I've been on a long time, but you know, the rate of change is really, really scary. And you know, there are times where you feel like just sticking your proverbial head in the sand and not dealing with it and hoping it goes away. But then, you know, you go the other route off of it. I can't think of a more exciting time to do what we all do as leaders within the state. You know, going back to Sid and his example here, how incredible is it that something that was transacted really not that long ago, 12 years ago, that now is considered a national model for how to sit there and do development. So I think, you know, it's a glass half empty, half full. My perspective on it, I'm always an optimist, but I think it's definitely, we have a glass that's half full, and it's just what an exciting time. And you look at Florida, yes, has its challenges, but you know, I get to fortunately do economic development in a lot of different states, and guess what? Other states have their challenges also, but I think the thing that's awesome here is I don't see anywhere else where there are states that are having conversations such as this, that how do we not worry about what's going to happen over the next 6 months, and how do we really focus on you know, the long term and make it right.
So we've talked about infrastructure, and we already have some fantastic resources in terms of a spaceport, unique asset for Florida. airports and seaports, surface transportation that really is ahead of the game, talent that actually wants to live here, but we do have some stresses. We didn't talk enough about this, but that attainable housing, particularly for workforce housing, is one of those challenges. And it's so important because you've seen how quickly industries and communities can move forward when you have all the assets and capabilities there. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know, the affordable housing is really a scary point. And if everyone remembers back, you know, it was really probably the #1 topic before the last economic downturn, and then it sort of seemed to go away with that. But it is now rearing its head again, I think, I know definitely the community I live in, I think every community. And I'll tell you, you know, one of the things that was part of been the cause of it, and Sid and others who are in the development business can tell you that since the recession, there's such a hidden cost of fees and impact fees and other things that have gone in that it makes it very difficult actually for somebody to build an affordable house based upon the fact that there's tens of thousands of dollars that are out before you ever stick a shovel in the ground. But I'll tell you from, you know, some of the other places that we're seeing really thrive, I think it's definitely something that's going to have to be addressed. I do not think there's a silver bullet. You know, there's an argue on, okay, is it densification, accessory dwelling units or that? But I think it's something that's definitely going to have to be solved, or it does become a limiting factor. And, you know, just on a personal experience, I was in Seattle last week. That's where our corporate headquarters are. And to see, you know, the big news out there now is that, you know, things are starting to slow down there from a pricing perspective and that. But the average residential unit in King County, single family, is still somewhere north of $650,000. Wow. And so what you've had is, you know, you want to talk about, you know, traffic, transportation issues. You have folks who've gotten so priced out of the market, or the folks who are really, you know, we call it the housing for heroes, the nurses, the folks that are, you know, with the fire department and that, they cannot afford to live anywhere near the city. So you have individuals, it's just a normal commute out there for anywhere from an hour and a half to sometimes 2 hours each way. And I think that is, you know, there's definitely something that we need to be very cautious here to not fall into that same situation.
One of the things that I've appreciated you since I first met you with Plum Creek and now with Weyerhaeuser, the largest private landowner in the world, is that right?
That is correct. We own 13.1 million acres in the U.S. We're in 18 different states, the largest landowner, I think, in about 11. So
the landowner is impressive enough. But really, right, one of the things you said the first time I met you was, look, you grow trees, and you take a lifespan perspective. So much of what people focus on is short term over the long term. So much of it is, what can I get done in 6 months, or what the next election, or whatever short time frame is. You've been engaged. I start by saying that you've been a trustee of the Florida Chamber Foundation for a while, because you've been committed to this over the long term, and I appreciate that patience. But when you think through Florida 2030, honestly, are we headed in the right direction to be that place that attracts? He's squirming up here, but he knew. I want honesty. You know, people, capital, opportunities, and if not, what do we got to get right? Leadership's already been thrown out there. Infrastructure investments has been thrown out there. So, you know, the door's already open.
Oh, boy, you're making me end this on a positive note, is what I've been instructed. So, no, I mean, I could argue it either way. I guess I'm going to go back to that. I would sit there and say that we are on a positive path right now, and we're on a positive path because of the folks that are in this room, that there's so many people that are vested in this discussion. And the best example I can give for my involvement in this is, you know, about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I first joined the Board of Trustees, I was involved with the first project, which was really the freight study. And there were those of us in the room, there were some, you know, I think actually everyone was more of an expert than I was sitting in there, but it was a matter of, you looked at some of these macro factors, such as the expansion of the Panama Canal, you know, just the growth potential within Florida. Some of the things were happening, you know, back then. We were also looking at, I think, you know, that was $4 to, you know, gasoline. All right, was oil going to go $200 a barrel. And so there was a group of us that got in the room that really, started out this process of, all right, at that point in time, I think there were 14 deep water ports in Florida, but let's take a real global view of what Florida has from an infrastructure perspective, and let's see if there's some strategies that come out of this. And so it was, led by this organization, and but what's been amazing to watch was now the traction that occurred as a result of that. So, I'll never forget the first time after Governor Scott was elected that there he was, presenting sort of his port plan and his infrastructure plan, and it was it exactly matched up to the work that had been done by the freight study group. So here we are today where we are at, freight study 3.0, but you can see where, even though, yes, I work for a company that you plant a tree and you wait 15 plus years to harvest it, you have a very long-term view of the state. But at the same point in time, I guess I've been around here long enough where I'm starting to see concrete evidence, Tony, of the work of the foundation, and concrete evidence by what the power is of getting together such a group as this in a room and having the discussion. And I can tell you from being involved with this, there's no other state right now where they're having the discussions that we're having here in Florida. So my conclusion is, I would say yes, Florida is headed in the right direction. It was not addressed today. I would say one thing that does worry me that we need to be careful of is that the last statistic I saw, I think that we have 85% of our population lives in the Florida coastal counties. So when you look at getting it right with the next 5 million, I think we may not get it right if we just assume that then that 85% of the next 5 million should go live in those some counties. Because I think when you look at, from an insurance perspective, and as you start having the 1,000-year storm events that are occurring, it seems like every couple years that, that's a definite potential stress. And again, it's just something that we need to take into consideration as we continue to sit there and plan the future.
Todd, I appreciate your leadership. It's going to be a great few years together on this process. I thank each of you for being here. One of the things that Todd and I were talking about in terms of this audience is there's a good number of folks that we haven't seen at other events. So I'm hoping that you will continue to come back, because it's your leadership, it's your partnership, it's now your ownership of this Florida 2030 that makes a big difference. We've got folks that have been working on this for a few years. We invite you to be part of this process. Each of you who invested time, talent, or treasure, thank you. Each of you who is going to do it for the next 3 or 4 years, even more thanks to you. Next opportunity for us to be together, January 14th, Economic Outlook Summit in Orlando. And if you want to continue the conversation about prosperity, we're having a business summit focused on prosperity and growth for Florida, and that's going to be in May. It's on your placemats, the agenda that you have in front of you at the very bottom. In June, we will gather so that we can have a conversation about learners to earners, making sure that our cradle to career pipeline is focused on it, and it's really going to be focused on workforce. I want to let you know right now that we have a half-day programmed on apprenticeships and the opportunities that come from trade and vocational opportunities as well. I think that when we're talking about the future of Florida, it has to be a full and complete conversation about how we all get there with all the assets, all the resources, and all the opportunities. We'll convene at the end of September, beginning of October for the Future of Florida Forum, and I hope to see you all there, because between here and there, there's a lot of work to be done, and we'll report out our successes and the shortcomings, the challenges. We don't have to end on a positive note. We want to end on a real note.
Yeah.
The only way to secure Florida's future is for us to work together, focusing long-term over the short-term and being real with each other, and using the floridascorecard.org, by the way, to really anchor towards the future. Look forward to our continued conversation. We're not done yet. Todd has a few last comments, but this is my last time up here. Thank you so much, and I appreciate, Todd, everything you're doing. So.
Thank you very much. Next time. I appreciate everyone coming out again, and please stay engaged in the conversation. It's great to see we did have some millennials in the room. I think that's also important for us, is to continue to expand the conversation. So there's a lot of folks that are going to be the stakeholders of what we're trying to accomplish, and I think the more that we can have them involved. Just a few notes. Thank you to SAE for all that they've done. There's going to be a reception, an SAE reception from 3 to 5 across the street at the old school building. If you're a car rider, check in at your scheduled time right where you registered. And then additionally, while you're waiting for your ride, there's going to be a reception on the second floor of the school, and you're going to be able to do a virtual reality scooter ride, which that actually sounds scarier than riding an autonomous vehicle to me. And additionally, there's going to be a Babcock Ranch shuttle that's going to be outside if anyone would like to sit there and take a tour. And I just, again, want to thank everyone for being here. Thank you, Sid, for being such a great host and for all the great work you've done here. And let's just keep pushing along and keep us going in the right direction so that 2030 is we have great potential to make a difference in the state, and it'll get done thanks to each and every one of you. So thank you for being here.